Hello, everyone. My name is Gordon Gustafson, your host of Closing the Gap, and today I'm talking with Dr. Janet Kellog-Ray, Adjunct Clinical Professor of Biology at the University of North Texas. And today I'd like to ask you, Professor, why are scientists always changing their minds and flip-flopping like politicians?
Why are scientists always flip-flopping like politicians, changing their minds and refining their models and frameworks? Why won't they just make up their minds? On the television show Parks and Recreation, there was a character who was an official in the Parks and Recreation Department. And at a press conference in one episode, this particular official was asked why she continually flip-flopped on issues relating to the Parks and Recreation Department. Well, this character made this statement. You know, when I was a kid, I thought that chocolate milk came from brown cows. But then I flip-flopped when I found out there was such a thing as chocolate syrup. Fighting evolution for decades has set the stage for this argument. Fighting the evidence for evolution for generations, for decades, has set the stage for the argument that scientists across the board in other scientific fields are constantly flip-flopping, just like politicians. Well, the first thing we need to understand when we hear this argument thrown against an area of science, specifically evolution in this case, we have to understand that Darwin lived and worked and researched almost 200 years ago. At the time that Darwin was researching and writing, no one had ever heard of a chromosome, much less a gene, and certainly not DNA. Modern genetics has given us an understanding far more than Darwin could ever have imagined. Darwin could not have imagined the things that we know from modern genetics that contribute to the variation and new species that Darwin observed. But those who deny evolution have seized upon this. Darwin was wrong. Here's why. Darwin said this, and this is not true. Again, Darwin's been dead 120 years. Of course, we know more. It's important to understand what a scientist means by the term theory. A theory, as used by scientists, means the foundational underpinnings of an entire field of science. Atomic theory undergirds chemistry. Mathematical theories undergird physics. Gravitational theory undergirds what we know about gravity. Now, the frontiers of what we know about a scientific theory may be in flux. At the frontiers, there are minute details and new things to discover. And so the frontiers of a science theory may be tweaked, but the foundations of a science theory have been in place, well studied, and have enough evidence behind them that the foundations of a science theory are not going to change. Tweaking the frontiers of a theory is not flip-flopping. Tweaking the frontiers of a science theory is simply adjusting the theory to new evidence, is simply adjusting to new information. So, for example, with our modern understanding of the field of epigenetics and whole gene duplications and gene transfers, we have adjusted our understanding of how natural selection works in evolution. But unfortunately, those who deny evolution have seized upon this. And the argument is always this: natural selection does not explain anything. No, our old understanding of natural selection does not explain everything. But modern genetics have opened up frontiers, which give us more information about how natural selection works. We know more about the processes in natural selection. We're not flip-flopping, we are incorporating new information. Again, theories in science are foundational. We aren't going to disprove germ theory. We're not going to go back several centuries and say that it's actually demons or a person's sin or stars and planets or breathing bad air, or even people of certain religions are the causes of disease. But when we're faced with a brand new major pandemic, we are going to learn more about a novel virus as a pandemic unfolds. And as we learn more in the midst of a pandemic about a novel virus, that is not flip-flopping. It is responding to new information. Again, we aren't going to jettison germ theory. We're not going to say, oh my, it must have been this person's sin in their life. We are going to start with germ theory. We're going to look at the virus. It may be a novel virus that we've not ever studied before, and we are going to study it. And as we get new information, we will tweak our approach to the novel virus. That's not flip-flopping. One of the reasons that pseudoscience is so attractive to many people is that pseudoscience provides certainty. On the other hand, science is never done. Science is never done. We never put it to rest, put it on our desk, file it away, and say, we've reached the end of our knowledge. We'll never know anymore. Science is always a work in progress. At the very least, science is the best evidence at the time. And here's the biggie. Science changes its mind with new evidence. That's not flip-flopping. New York Times award-winning science writer Carl Zimmer calls scientific papers progress reports, and I love that description. Science doesn't speak in terms of proof, but science speaks in terms of the best evidence at the time. So, in the case of a COVID vaccine, can we absolutely prove that the vaccine won't turn you into a zombie in 20 years? No, we can't prove that. But we can say that there's absolutely no evidence that it will. So flip-flopping doesn't mean that scientists can't be trusted, but it means that with new information, science may change course. Pseudoscience doesn't have this aspect. Pseudoscience speaks in terms of certainty, not flip-flopping, but science speaks in terms of best evidence, which unfortunately, if you don't understand how science works, may be interpreted as simply flip-flopping, changing your mind with the whatever way the wind is blowing.
Thank you very much for that wonderful response, Dr. Kellogg-Ray. So please remember, when you hear scientists debating or changing their minds based off new evidence, it's not flip-flopping. Science is contingent truth based on the most current available evidence, and when new evidence comes to light, we may refine our models and hypotheses. Changing your mind based off new evidence is a good thing. Until next time, this has been Closing the Gap.